Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Tony Munoz, Editor-in-Chief. Our Executive Corner podcast will provide conversations with top executives concerning events and issues that are shaping our industry today.
Hello, I'm Audrey Mejia, Assistant Editor at the Maritime Executive Magazine, and on this episode of In the Know, we'll hear Editor-in-Chief Tony Munoz and Knut Ørbeck-Nilssen, CEO of DNV, discuss the importance of alternative fuels, innovations in maritime technology, and the role classification societies will play. Listen in.
Welcome, Knut.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's great to be on your show. Thank you.
An interesting thing, when you and I did an audio podcast many years ago, and we did that as an interview for the cover, because you're a cover man of ours in the past, and we thank you for that. But we used that podcast, that interview, and made it a podcast. And I'm happy to say it got over 10,000 views. Over 10,000 views. You're a very influential person, and we're glad to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. And you're way too kind to me, but I certainly appreciate it.
All right, so let's start. COVID has impacted the entire maritime industry. It has also revealed new issues about seafarer fatigue and stress. What can be done?
Well, I think, first of all, we all have to realize that without the seafarers, I mean, the wheels of the world will stop turning and we will be in a terrible state. And to avoid that, we really need to have governments recognizing the seafarers as essential workers. And unfortunately, that is not really happening. I mean, there are several governments that has done it, but still nearly 70% of the IMO member states have not recognized the seafarers as essential workers. And that causes a lot of problems with crew changes, with the arrival in airports, etc., etc. And I think that is, the first essential step, that we really have to push every head of state to really make that commitment and recognize them as essential workers. And then I must say, I really applaud the US, the UK, several other nations are actually offering vaccines to seafarers that are visiting their ports. And I think that is a great initiative, and certainly one that needs to be picked up by many more states as we are getting more and more robust towards this virus. So I think also what we can do more, say, on the closer to home areas, that we have really committed with the Mission to Seafarers. So they are doing a lot of good work for the seafarers, for their welfare, and we have taken active part in their work, donated money, but not only that, we've also helped them to develop an app that will measure how seafarers are feeling taken care of on board the vessels. And then there are some initiatives, like for instance in Singapore, where we are engaging on this, how to do a crew safe exchange program. And this is also naturally very important, that we are making sure that the crew changeover is taking place in a responsible manner. So yeah, so from heads of state to, signing up to the charities, like the Mission to Seafarers, and finally actually doing some real practical work on the ground with the crew exchange. So let's continue that, and let's continue the push for the seafarers' well-being. That is naturally vitally important to keep logistics moving around the world.
Tell me, I'm hearing that there are still many seafarers that have been out there for months, and have not had a crew change. I mean, is this what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, I mean, we are still hearing that, several hundred thousands are, working beyond their contract periods. And to start off with, they are a long time at sea in the first place, and then when the crew changeovers cannot be done, and it's not because the ship owners or the ship managers are not trying, but it's just so practically difficult to make it happen. And ultimately, these fathers, sisters, brothers, they are also family members, and they are at sea and they have not seen their families for a really long time. And we can all imagine the stress, the despair, and the hopelessness that they can, experience during this time.
It's tragic. It's tragic. And I know that organizations like yours are doing their best to help them maintain an even keel.
And I would say also, Tony, I really appreciate that this is the first question that you asked me, because having this on the agenda is so important. I mean, it's so easy when, attention span is not that long in today's world. And right. By you actually asking the question and, in the Know podcast, you're putting this as your first question. I think that tells a lot about the focus that you're also having at the Maritime Executive. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. It's a major concern, and we've covered that over the last year or so, a year and a half or so. And it's agonizing to watch. It's agonizing to hear about. And we wish them all the best. And I hope they, on the ships, watch this podcast and understand that we're here there to help them, and we support them. Thank you. CO2 reduction, decarbonization is one of the top priorities in the maritime industry. Tell us about some of the alternative fuels being supported by your organization, and are we going to achieve IMO 2030, 2050?
To start off on your last part of that question, I'm an optimist, and I really think that it is possible, and we should all, commit and do our best to achieve it. And I think there is a lot of momentum building in the industry right now. And we've seen maybe since 2020 a certain uptake of alternative fuels that are very encouraging. And it sets a good example, when some of the bigger players are moving, it creates a momentum for some of the others to follow that lead. And I think that is what we have seen in the last couple of years. And yes, there are quite a number of options. And I think what is, probably a bit complex for many to apprehend is the fact that some of these alternatives are a bit into the future, whilst others are more, say, available right now. And that's why we at DNV are really, trying to promote the use of dual fuel gas engines as one of the, practical, proven technologies that are available just now. And we've seen in the last couple of years that those type of engines running on gas has become very popular. And I think now, if you look at the new buildings, it's around 12% of the new buildings orders placed in the last year has been with a dual fuel gas engine. So I think that is very encouraging. And as we know, there is, a lot of gas available in the world. So that is not only technically proven, but it's also commercially available, and the infrastructure is building quite rapidly. But having said that, to take us to the end line, we also need to develop other types of fuel options that would reduce the CO2 emission even further. So with gas, you can achieve up to 25% reduction. And then, of course, you can apply some other technologies like energy efficiency devices, sails, etc. But to really get to the finish line, we also need to look into other alternatives. And in our view, ammonia is one hot candidate for the future, as is methanol. And I think with those three, gas, ammonia, and methanol, in combination also with batteries for the, say, the final approach into the ports, we have quite a good recipe for what is available within the next, say, several decades. Maybe a little bit further out is the advanced atomic solutions, but that is, I think, maybe something that we shouldn't discard, but it's maybe something that still needs to be worked on a bit further. So there are options out there, and I'm, as I said, I'm optimistic, and I think with the momentum that is building now, also the responsibility that many leaders in the industry are showing, we will achieve those goals, even though it's going to be, you know, a lot of hard work to get there.
No question about it. During this COVID period, a lot of owners got rid of old tonnage, and there's been a rejuvenation, and the shipyards are full. So hopefully we'll take this opportunity to restructure the way we use fuels and get ahead of this. That's about the only good outcome that's happened over the last year and a half. And hopefully the revitalization of shipping with new technologies will put us ahead of the curve on this issue. So where was I? Okay, so big deal about decarbonization and this new technology that we're trying to do. It is estimated that it could cost up to $1 trillion by 2070 or 2050, hundreds of millions of dollars for sure. Considering the level of ambition, how does the industry absorb these costs?
Well, I think for any industry to absorb, you know, costs in that range, it cannot happen without, you know, sharing that burden with the, you know, the wider chain, with the logistic companies, with the end consumers, etc. Because I mean, the amounts that we talk about are really, you know, too much for a single industry to bear alone. But what I think is really important is that now we've you know, with the regulations on the EEXI and the CII that are measuring, you know, the carbon intensity and the carbon emission of vessels, I think we are making, you know, good progress to start, you know, creating the benchmark and the journey ahead for how to reduce it. And then with potentially what the International Chamber of Shipping is proposing, that we put a $2 carbon levy on the ordinary fuel, I think makes a lot of sense, because it will encourage people to move into the new and more, say, environmental friendly technologies, but also the amounts of funds gathered will help to innovate and to, you know, let us come up with better solutions and more energy efficient and less carbon intensive solutions for the future. And that is in many ways, I often talk about, you know, the maritime renaissance, and what we are seeing is, you know, changes at a massive scale. Is a big transformation going on, and, you know, a levy to this extent that I just described would really help fund a lot of innovative processes that could, you know, take us in the right direction. And that is, you know, a maritime renaissance about to take place just as we speak now.
Well, the obvious question, next question is what role will class play in the energy transition? You are a leader in maritime in many ways, and your leadership is going to make the difference. What role will your organization play?
Yeah, I think we do have quite a big responsibility actually in all of this. And you know, first and foremost, it's about ensuring that when this transformation is taking place, whether we are moving to new types of fuel or whether indeed digitalization is, making us work in different ways. I think it's all about, safety and how can we ensure that vessels, that crew on board are staying safe and that we keep everything, working in a good way. So that is sort of the basic class services. But then taking that a little bit further, so what we just talked about, what will be the future fuels and how will they be implemented on board? I think that is really where the classification societies can not only be in the vanguard of developing rules, but also, advising how this can be done in a safe manner going forward. So all the way from, the research and development activity, the foresight, into the actual implementation, and at the end making sure that the vessels are safe and the crew are safe on board the vessels. I think that is basically the role, and it's not a small role, as you can imagine.
Wow.
It's an important role in the say the maritime cluster altogether.
So let's take this to another level. The industry has been known as a people's industry, yet AI and digitalization are becoming increasingly an important part of maritime operations. This technology and this use of digitalization is driving the transformation. Comment on that, please.
Yeah, I think, I would still regard the maritime industry as very much a people industry, and we should maintain it as a people's industry. But there's obvious advantages by also taking into use the data that we have available now, the processing capacities that we have available now. And I think, when you look at all the data that is being, gathered and will be gathered as the deployment of sensors and other technologies become more common, we have that fantastic opportunity to take our human-based knowledge and combine it with the powerful, machine learning and artificial intelligence technology from the data that we also gather. So I think those two in combination really sets out for quite a powerful industry where we are more efficient, but also better at safety, and still keeping the human touch and human in the center of everything that we do. And gathering large amounts of data let the algorithms do a lot of the tedious manual work on looking at the data, and we as people and seafarers and humans can really focus on the more critical tasks and be helped with some of those more tedious tasks. And I think that is a recipe that not only seafarers and people working in the maritime industry will welcome, but also it will benefit the safety aspects and how we are running our vessels in an efficient way.
Interesting during this COVID period that the maritime industry had the ability to step up and digitally and get cargoes moving around the world. We talked about it for a long period of time, about digitalization, a part of our industry. And COVID really gave us the opportunity to prove that it was the right thing for us to begin moving that direction. And your leadership on this, your DNV's leadership and your leadership on this is greatly acknowledged.
Thank you, Tony. Tony, I think I've also said that, with the pandemic, I think we saw that, the digitalization of the industry was turbocharged by at least half a decade. And I think that is what we have seen. I mean, it's really amazing that, big shipping companies or smaller shipping companies with vessels in many, many places around the world, they've been able to keep on running. And, we've been taking into use Zoom and Teams and whatnot, just, as
Right.
it was something we've done for, whole our lives. So it's really been turbocharged during this pandemic. So that's a good thing. So now I think the challenge now is to find the right balance between, how we, normally would do it and how we can use modern technologies to really, help us supplement and complement all the ways that we are working to make it even better.
Yeah, I don't think we have any choice. We've been pulled into the future, whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
DNV is an important part of moving ships and maintaining compliance through the pandemic. How have you managed your staff and all of the different offices? What have been some of the challenges?
Yeah, it's been quite a lot of challenges, especially I would say for our surveyors, because, our surveyors, they are attending vessels in many different ports around the world. And as the pandemic sort of evolved from Asia towards the West and now, coming around again, all the different local legislations and local instructions really put, a lot of demands on our surveyors to really know what is applicable in this port and what if we have to travel to this vessel, etc., etc. And then it's the practicalities, when you are working in a hot environment, climbing ladders up and down in tanks, and you have to wear a face mask and all these, taking all these precautions. It's really hardship all the way. So, they have been, I must say, extremely agile and willing to adapt and also very much committed to, the purpose of the work they are doing to safeguard life at sea. And that has helped us through this pandemic. On top of that, naturally it played, a great support for us to have been quite advanced on digitalization already. So we were able to do remote surveying techniques where we couldn't, physically attend with the surveyor. And but it's been tough on the staff, and many, as you know, and you probably also been working from home over a prolonged period of time, taking care of homeschooling. It's a lot of challenges for everyone. But I think a great motivation and a deeper purpose of what is, the work that we are doing and what it means to the world. I think that has helped us to push forward.
Thank you for your time and for your leadership. And do you have anything you'd like to say before we end this podcast?
Well, Tony, I would just like to say that, again, thank you very much for, sharing your podcast with so many people. You mentioned 10,000 in the previous podcast that we ran. I'm sure your numbers are higher now. And
it was just you. They came to see 10,000 people came to listen. That's
amazing.
We didn't even do a video podcast. And I have to say, when I saw the numbers, I was pretty impressed.
And, during these times, it's so important that we are, able to reach out, connect people, because, it can become extremely tedious if you're just looking at your own work on your own computer screen. And I think the social aspect of what you are doing with this podcast and, keeping the maritime community together is really important. So I would like to say thank you very much, Tony. It's been a pleasure to be on In the Know, and I wish you all the best.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. And Knut Ørbeck-Nilssen, CEO of DNV. Hope to see you soon.
See you soon, Tony. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to In the Know, the Maritime Executive Podcast. We hope you'll join us again for our next exciting industry discussion. In the meantime, you can visit us at maritime-executive.com for top news on critical maritime issues.